Hello, guys. Hope all is well. We're back here. We want to say a few things. We're actually in the book of David Klinghoffer's "Why the Jews Rejected Jesus," and I wanted to say a few things about what I was reading today. What we'll do, like always, is we'll read a quote, and then we'll have some comments to say, some elaboration, some connections about the historical reality and what has transpired since the inception of Christianity and the exposure of the nations to Jesus of Nazareth, the Jew. All right, so with that, let's get right into it. Here on page 8 of the introduction of David Klinghoffer's book, he says this, the consequences of this outcome for Western history would be hard to overstate. Christianity would not have spread wildly across the Roman Empire and later across Europe as it did. Though the Jewish religion in the first century had numerous Gentile admirers, known as God-fearers, who prayed in synagogues without undertaking the Jewish program of study and action as described by the Torah, Judaism, per se, was never designed to be a mass religion. Its rewards ascend to the heavens, but its ways take careful meditation and definite commitment to appreciate their deeper joys. This is not to say that Christianity is undemeaning or without its own later tradition of church law, but command of such things was never required except of its learned clergy. A Jewish Christianity would have stood as much a chance of taking hold of huge numbers of people as a church nowadays that asks all its members to earn a master's degree in theology. And that's the quote right there. And so I wanted to say some things. I was discussing with some friends about some issues that are connected to this quote. And what is that? Of how Christianity has such an effect like no other religion has had on the world before. You see, Judaism, Torah Judaism is very particularistic, meaning it has in its foresight, right in front of it, only Jewish people are part of the covenant of God and the Torah given at Sinai. That doesn't mean that Judaism is a tribal cult only, or a tribal religion, or tribal God. It's not. Over and over again in the entire Hebrew Bible, God calls himself the God of all the world, of all the universe. He is the God of, he made the Gentile nations, and he made the Jewish people as well. But this came out, the light of God, and when I mean the light of God, I mean the faith, the Torah, came through a specific people. It was revealed to the Jewish people. And at that time, how would it be revealed to the rest of the world? Only through the vehicle of the Jewish people would it be revealed. I mean, Jesus has something to say about that when he's speaking to the woman at the well, the Samaritan woman, right? They have this discussion back and forth, Samaritans don't know who they worship, because the Samaritans, they worship God on a different mountain, and, but the Jews, they worship God on this mountain, etc. That's how the story goes. But then Jesus says something very interesting. He says, we are the Jewish people, he's saying, we know whom we worship because it is from us that salvation comes. He says that salvation comes through the Jewish people, and this is true because the light of God, his revelation, has come to us through the vehicle of Israel. In Kabbalah, Israel is likened to the Shekinah, meaning the Israelites, the entity of Israel. The Shekinah dwells with her, with the Jewish people. And so as they travel and wherever they go, the Shekinah goes with her too. The Shekinah, this is the divine presence of God. Because Paul says this too in the New Testament. He says in his letters, he says, to them were given the oracles of God. This is the Bible, the oracles of God, or the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible. To them were given the oracles of God, the covenants, um, the priests, the divine service, meaning the service in the holy temple in the base of Hamikdash. And he says, and through them comes the Messiah, right? This is true. All these different gifts were given to the Jewish people, and they are to share them with the world, because in according to various prophets, the Nevi'im, Israel is supposed to be a light unto the nations. Okay. Now, historically, how has Israel been a light to the nations? Not so much out of their own free will. Remember, in the Torah, we have accounts of all of Israel's deeds, whether they were good or whether they were bad. It's all there outright for them to see, for everyone to see. So we know about their failings, etc. But they're a nation who struggles with the divine, struggles with with Hashem, with the Creator of heaven and earth. They continue to strive to do what's right, and this is what it is to be a man. This is what it is to be a real man, a creation of God. And so, even through the transgressions and when they've been exiled, they have been exposed to the nations. Okay. These two things in Kabbalah and according to Hasidus is called the particularistic aspect that is Judah. Judah is very particularistic. He was for his people, for the Jews, right? But then you have the other aspect, that is the aspect of Joseph. Okay, Joseph was more universalistic. He had an aspect to his teaching, to his Torah teaching, that was far-reaching. It could reach other places, and of course Hashem knew, since God knows all things, He knew this, and it seems like his brothers could almost feel it, and there was a power struggle there. This is the reason why he was sold onto the nations. And you see every step of the way, he was sold and got further and further. And then even when he was far away, because God had his divine providence upon him, he rose through the ranks to becoming basically like Pharaoh. And at that time, the Egyptians were the main power of the world. So they had influences on all other countries as well. He rose up to that power, right? And we also know that historically, you read the Tanakh, and there was a breakage. This breakage, the Kabbalists link it to the breaking of the vessels in the beginning of creation. Okay, the Arizal, he speaks about this. There was a breaking of the vessels. The light could not contain in the vessels that the word broke, and the holy sparks scattered. This break between Judah, Benjamin, and the other 10 tribes, the northern and southern tribes, is connected with this. And there are some historical phenomena that come along with this as well. But the 10 tribes were lost to the nations because they were the first ones to be exiled. But they were lost in the nations. You see, here it is, we're being connected with the same things we're discussing. And when they were lost to the nations, yeah, the 10 tribes were already, becoming, they had a lot of different philosophies, etc. They didn't go worship at the Beis Hamikdash. So there was an element of idolatry and of false beliefs. But they had a lot of Yiddishkeit. They had a lot of Judaism still within them. And I'm sure that even among the 10 northern tribers, there were still a lot of people who didn't agree with what was going on at the higher levels of the leadership. And they still believed in the God of Israel, etc. While Judah, they still had the temple, they had the priest, they had the king of Judah, the rightful king, right? And they continued to worship Hashem until finally the rebellion caused them to be exiled as well. But the 10 northern tribes have never really been found. Maybe some individuals here and there, according to some scholarship, but they've never really been found. And we have rabbis today and Kabbalists, etc. They say that they were intermingled with the nations, and maybe they don't know who they were, and the phenomenon of Christianity had arisen, and maybe they were further concealed because you have the Christians forcefully converting people, and you have these conversals, you have the Moranos, and these are people who were Jewish, but throughout the centuries, they might have lost the last little aspects of Judaism that they had, and now they're trying to come back. The spark within them, the soul within them, is trying to come back to the Torah and to their people. This could very well be the situation, and Joseph is linked to the 10 northern tribes, to the 10 tribes. He's linked to them, and as you could see, the midrashim and different teachings, they explain that when Joseph was the viceroy of Egypt, that he made many of the Egyptians come to the true light of God. He circumcised many of them, and many of them became believers in the one true God. Right? This explains a lot. This explains why when you read, now that we're in the parsha of Shemot, of Exodus, and you see that some of the midwives or some of the people in the court of Egypt, like Pharaoh's daughter that saves Moses, why they were God-fearing. They did good things. They went against the edicts of Pharaoh. And some have explained that this is the remnants of Joseph's teachings among the Egyptians, some of the Egyptians. And at one time also, I've seen a documentary that explains that at one time, and they try to link it to the time that Joseph was in Egypt during their slavery there, that the Egyptians believed in one God, that there was a time that there was a Pharaoh there that they were monotheist and they believed in one God. This is all very interesting things. And so we see the universalistic aspect of Judaism, of the Torah, that it's linked with Joseph, with the 10 tribes lost among the exiles. And idolatry, it's either concealed or it's really there. There's an element of idolatry that must be there because the particularistic aspect of Judaism that corresponds to Judah could not be exposed outright to the nations. They would never accept this. Maybe an individual here or there, but not as a whole. They would not accept this. It wouldn't have as much how do you say, it wouldn't go as well or have much adherents, react to it as what Joseph's as his teachings were, as his outlook was to other people. People could relate to him. He was an Egyptian. He was like them, and so it probably wouldn't have as much success, is the word I was looking for, as the particularistic aspect of Judaism and Judah and the Jewish people. Because you see, the Rambam says that when the Messiah appears, right, and the Messianic era starts or whatever, we know that the Messiah is here, that everything will be normal. There will be no miraculous aspect to the world. Everything will work as normal, And how would the Messiah reach the entire world with the knowledge and belief in the one God of Israel? How would he do that? Certainly it would have to be a process of people, coming, to learn, and this would take time. This would take a lot of time, right? So I've always said that whoever the Messiah is, when he comes, he has his work cut out for him. If he's going to be Jesus of Nazareth and the phenomenon that comes with Christianity, he has a whole lot of work to do because Christianity has had 2,000 years to influence the entire world. Okay? So, and it didn't come perfect because Christianity was not perfect. It has its elements of idolatry connected, of foreign worship connected. But at the same time, within all this, there is the elements of truth. There's fundamental aspects of the Torah sparks within, encased in Christianity. Many rabbis have been able to understand this, and they've called it. The Rambam called it Maimonides, Nachmanides. Also, he says the same thing. Various commentators among the Jewish people have said this. Rabbi Jacob Emden. We can name a whole bunch of them. And so it's very interesting that how everything happened. Jesus, the Jewish man, who was an observant Jew who abided by all the laws. So were his first disciples, his apostles, etc. They were Jews within Torah Judaism. He was not a god. He was not a man god. This is all Hellenistic Western thought that was connected to these teachings when they were exposed. People who were foreigners, people who were real pagans. And when they were exposed to these teachings, not having a strong foundation, learning the Torah correctly, these things were easily misconstrued, misunderstood, and they used the vessels and they used the elements of the religion that they had, which was Greek mythology, etc., where all emperors and all their heroes were god men. So it's very easily to do the same thing to Jesus. But look back. Joseph was viewed the same way by the majority of the Egyptians. By the majority, I mean 90% of Egypt probably thought that he was, like Pharaoh, a god, right? Or he had that divine aspect, because this is the way they viewed him. And I'm sure that it was very hard for Joseph to get people to come to the one true God. Took a lot of, teaching. And so with Jesus, it's the same thing that's happened to him. We're talking about a Jewish man who lived his entire life in Israel among his countrymen. And now the nations are being exposed to this man. How do they understand his teachings? Never been exposed to anything that has to do with Torah, right? It's no secret that what transpired would transpire, and that transpired that fast. Within 150 years, things were already getting corrupted, right? So it's we can see how this happened, and all the elements that had to happen. And I think it was divine providence that the ways that these things happened had to happen so that the nations can begin to have these fundamentals within them. And you see, the world knows about Moses, about Aaron, about Miriam, about Adam, about, the story of creation that the Jewish people, that has been passed along, the true Masorah, the true tradition that's been passed on through the Jewish people. Moses and Abraham, Isaac and Jacob and Joseph and all the kings. Christianity, the nations know these righteous men, know the stories of the fathers, know all these things about the divine laws because of this one Jewish man from Galilee from 2,000 years ago. They know all these men. They've been exposed to all these truths because of Jesus of Nazareth. There are various midrashim and secrets that say that the Mashiach, the Messiah, is the head of Israel in sense. And so he's also a comprehensive soul, like Moses, like Adam Harishon, like Adam, who housed all the souls of Israel within him. Okay? And so he too, being the head of Israel, is also a light to the nations. The Radak says that the Messiah, and the prophets too, and Isaiah says that the Messiah will be a light to the nations, and the nations await his law. He is supposed to teach them fundamentals of true faith. And like I said, various rabbis and Kabbalists, they speak about the fact that the Messiah, and with the Messiah comes this revelation to the nations. And so I'll say it again, even though Christianity, with all its faults, they have served to make the way, pave the way, make the nations ready. So when a time comes, it can be very easy to get the nations to be kosher, to correct their misunderstandings, get them in a school of learning, unlearning the false beliefs that they had, and get them to learn correctly the true faith of God as revealed in His Torah. So I wanted to share those thoughts with you guys today. I hope you enjoyed, and peace to all. Take care.